What's going on, Steelers Nation? Man, I can't even lay down and take a nap these days, man, without the Steelers doing some crazy stuff. What a day. What a day. See, we got a decent amount of people waiting in here. So just before I get started, I'm just going to kind of like let a couple more people filter in. Um, you know, all in all, obviously, we're out here to talk about the Diontae Johnson trade for Diontae Jackson to Carolina. They're swapping late round picks. The Steelers are giving up a seventh. They're getting a sixth in return. Just kind of catching up on the details of the trade. I mean, if you've kind of followed my stuff over the past couple of weeks, you guys knew that this was probably coming. I think I even talked about this the last time I was on here, that was kind of expecting that this was going to take place. I said on Twitter, like, the return was not going to be what a lot of people I think were thinking. Like, I was seeing that people were, mentioning me and stuff like, hey, would he fetch a second? Would he fetch a third? Could they include him in some type of trade for L'Jarius Sneed? That was never going to be the case, guys. I mean, obviously, as you can tell by this return, I mean, that was so far out of the ballpark of what he was actually going to fetch on the open market. And, I see we got some more people in here. The return obviously is disappointing, especially really just from a player evaluation standpoint, what Diontae does, one of the better route runners in the league, at the very minimum, a baseline, wide receiver one, high and wide receiver two type. It also sucks for the Steelers because, as of right now, they really only have like one proven NFL receiver on the roster right now, and that's George Pickens. Even with Arthur Smith, not using a lot of three wide receiver sets, you really have to be 3-4 deep at that position at the NFL level right now in order to have a good passing attack. Now, the reasons for Diontae Johnson being traded, a lot of this stuff I feel like has kind of been, I'm not a sources guy, so don't come in here. The reason why I haven't even talked about this a lot on Twitter is just because I try to stay out of that stuff. It's just not my lane. But the reason why the Steelers are moving on is just because, last year was really rough in the locker room. Like, no qualms about it. It was really tough. The offense was really struggling. There was a lot of frustration around the offensive coordinator. There was a lot of frustration around the quarterback position. These are all things that I have talked about and written about. Now, some people have kind of brushed those aside because, Canada got fired, Kenny got benched, and all those different things. But, the big leader in the clubhouse in that kind of movement was Diontae. I mean, he's been really frustrated. He was really frustrated in Pittsburgh last year to the point where he was making meetings extremely uncomfortable. There was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. I'm not going to get into all the details, but when you're that type of player, and, Diontae, I think, is a good player. And if you follow me on Twitter for a long time, y'all know I rock with Diontae. I think he's a lot better than a lot of people give him credit for. I've always felt like I've defended him a lot on social media. But at the same time, I feel like over the past, year or so, there's been some ego stuff, I think, that's there with a lot of receivers that's kind of crept up with Diontae stuff. So I think the big thing for me is, at this point in his career, Diontae was probably, like I talked about, just wanting a fresh start. Diontae was heading into the last year of his career. He's going into an offense that's going to be extremely run heavy. They don't really necessarily have a surefire good quarterback option available. So they bring in Russell Wilson, a couple days ago as kind of a stopgap option. But that's really a short-term thing, even if you're really optimistic about how that's going to work. But he just really wasn't getting along with the quarterbacks in the room. And that's kind of problematic when you're a receiver and you're making a lot of money like that. Also, I mean, you guys have, I think some of you maybe have caught on because y'all have DM'd me about some of it. But I've talked about, some of the moves that the Steelers have made over the past couple months. Have kind of told you guys that things are going to be different in meeting rooms, in the facility over the next year or so. They let go of the receivers coach. A lot of that was to rein guys like Diontae, George in and try to get more structure within the building. And I don't think that that's necessarily a shock that they bring in Arthur Smith, who is a little bit more of a more stricter coach. I think you could say, if you listen to how the players talk about it, they really like Arthur Smith. I think he has a good approval rating from people in the building, but he's a little more by the book. They weren't going to have the same freedom. They weren't going to have the same, a lot of the stuff that was going on behind the scenes was not going to rock with Arthur in the building. And then, they bring in a new wide receivers coach. And if you just go on YouTube, type in the wide receivers coach's name, I think Zach Kazani, you can go look at kind of the stuff that he really cares about. It's like toughness, effort, all this different stuff. Again, another guy who has a little bit of a reputation for being a little bit more difficult, a little harder, a little more structure. And they bring these guys in. I don't think that's necessarily a shock that they did that with everything that was going on in the building last year. And I also think, and this is the other stuff is what I know has happened. Diontae was getting into it with some of the leaders on the team in the locker room, having back and forth and things like that. that were not, let's just call it like not healthy work discussions. Some of the guys even on the defensive side of the ball was coming into the meetings and they were getting into it. I'm not gonna name names, but basically having to calm him down because he was pointing up at the film, like basically saying like, "Hey, I'm open. Like, look at this. This play calls trash. This quarterback can't give me the ball. Whatever. Yada 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 yada. All this different stuff." And they were having to calm him down like repeatedly. So there's this growing kind of tension in the room between him and everybody else. And then the other aspect of that, I think, is just when you're a guy who's entering the last year of his contract, he's a little expensive. What's the best course of action going forward? And I think that their theory is, this is me thinking, everything else is what I know. This is what I think. I think they want to give him away from George because I think they want to try to reel George in. There was some stuff with, George and some other guys not necessarily being on time to meetings and things like that last year. That's also, I think, one of those things that they're wanting to kind of hammer down. So I just think they want a little bit more structure in the room. And, this is what I know. So, y'all know I don't really do the source stuff. So this isn't me like making stuff up. If y'all follow me for a long time, y'all know I don't get into this stuff too often. Now, what does it mean for the Steelers going forward? I can't really speak too much on Diontae Jackson just because I haven't really watched his tape. I would just say that, Jackson in particular, really fast corner. He's really not their type in terms of like build. He's a really skinny dude. Doesn't have a ton of he's kind of smaller. But just him being included in the deal, I think is just one of those things where they were just trying to get a baseline starter to go across from Joey. And that is what it is. I mean, they were trying to figure out, the Steelers right now they have holes all across the receiver room too, but they have holes in the secondary because they lost a bunch of pieces. They let go of Patrick Peterson. He was a veteran leader in the locker room. He was really good with Joey. I think that there's still a chance that he could come back. He talked about, the door's kind of open, but they got a lot of missing snaps on that side of the ball. So they just need capable guys, even if there's not necessarily cap, ramifications or benefits to trading Diontae for Dante. I mean, this is pretty much one for one. And the late round pick swap doesn't really do anything because if you guys, a lot of you guys are subs to the channel and y'all watch all the different stuff. And I've told y'all, like, hey, this draft is not very deep. Like day 3 picks in this draft, like once you get past the 4th or 5th round, doesn't really matter. Like they're just not like, you're going to see some teams that are just going to completely punt on those type of picks, or maybe they try to stash them for the next year, use them to move up. I don't know, but this draft is not that deep. Now the other thing was really interesting when we talked about like the combine post game. You can go find it on the channel. I talked about all the receivers that they had formal visits with. One of the names that got released afterwards was Rome Odunze from Washington, a guy that is absolutely going to go. I think his floor is probably Chicago at 9, but he's a guy that you have to move up and get. And it was kind of interesting that the Steelers met with him and all these other like first round type of receivers, right? Like they met with Brian Thomas Jr., first round receiver, A.D. Mitchell from Texas, first round receiver. So even knowing what I knew and the fact that, Diontae was welcoming a change of scenery and Pittsburgh was also probably going to welcome a change of scenery, that kind of got my wheels clicking in terms of, okay, this is like legitimately probably going to happen. And then over the past couple of weeks, I've kind of learned more of the details on what was actually going on. And that is what it is. Again, the whole situation really sucks about like where they're at. I don't really have, I'm trying to like look through the comments or anything like that. If you guys have any questions that I can answer, I will. Like I said, I don't really have a ton of thoughts on Diontae Jackson, to be honest with you. I really need to like look at his film. I know he's a guy that's like his game is predicated off speed. He's, he will get his hands on some footballs. He's been, from what I know, the Panthers people that I follow that like watch film and stuff like that, I've always heard that he's extremely inconsistent and not just like game to game, but like snap to snap. So I'm sure that, there probably is some validity to that, but I'm just like looking at his, Pro Football Focus stuff right now. Missed tackle rate's a little bit high, 16.9%. Looks like last year he had 6 PBUs. The year before he had 1, but he had 2 picks, 29 career pass breakups. So I don't know. I'll look at the film and see what that says. But I think bottom line, they just needed somebody that they were going to be able to trust. Because they're gonna probably address this position again in free agency or via the draft, like a high draft pick. But it's just, I think they just needed a guy there that they can at least trust and say like, okay, that way we don't have to put a rookie out there week 1 and kind of see what happens with that. I'm just going to go get T. Higgins. I just don't see. I don't see like even the Rome stuff. Rome's fantastic, but I don't see them like moving up in the. I don't see them moving up in the draft for a guy like Odunze or really any of these guys. To be honest with you, I do think like AD Mitchell is a guy who I really love. Like on Twitter, I've talked a lot about him, and maybe that's where they go. I don't know. Is just I think his probably ceiling in the draft is probably like 15 to the Colts. I mean, the dude ran in the 4.3s. His tape's really good. He's only 21 years old. I think the sky's the limit for him. He's a guy who I'm really high on. I mean, he was a top 20 player for me entering the combine, and I knew he was going to run fast. I wasn't surprised. I was surprised that he ran like 4.2, 3 or whatever he ran, but I knew he was fast. Kid's really good. So I would like him. Are the Steelers going to be comfortable taking a round one receiver? I mean, they've got some other needs too. They still need a center. They probably still need a left or right tackle, depending on where Broderick Jones plays. This is a really good receiver and cornerback draft in terms of the depth and the top of the draft. So there are going to be options available in the first round. Also, I think you can find corners in this draft probably in the third or fourth round. But I do see a question in here. And again, I don't want to like come off as like I'm like trying to like bash Diontae. This is just all stuff that what I know. And we got like 400 people in here. KC, that's a good shout. If y'all could like the video, just make sure you're subscribed, turn on notifications. Yeah, 400 people. If 20 likes, if I could get that number up, that would be good. It help spread the channel. Helps me bring y'all more contact. Yeah, I mean Diontae, they were selling low, right? He was also coming off a year that he was injured. And, I think it's just really unfortunate for me. Like I said, I've always been a fan of his game. And, I think he's a fine dude too. Like it just sucks that they were never able to get him like top tier quarterback play, because I think you would have seen a lot more production. He would be held in a lot higher regard, than what he is. And I also think, this is a good point. I can sit here and look at this deal just on the surface without really digging too deep into Diontae Jackson's film and say like, they sold low. It just is what it is. I mean, sometimes this stuff just happens. The way that the timing of the deals work and what's out there, what's available, the perception of him, who you're trying to get back. If you're making a move like this, you're not just making a move like this in a vacuum, right? Like there are moves to be had based on the outcome of this trade. So where they pivot to, how they replace him is way more important to me than and no offense to Diontae Jackson. I think he's going to be a fine player. And like, I'm excited about looking at the film, cornerbacks. I could watch cornerback film all day, but I think the big thing for me is like, how are they going to pivot from that? And I also want to say like, and this is me, y'all know how I get down, especially if y'all follow me on Twitter for a long time. I don't do like the blind, like fan copium type stuff. So I'm not just going to give y'all like, oh, just trust the process, whatever, if I don't actually think it's worth trusting the process. But I think that Khan's process through the last, 2 years has been really good. Even when the necessary moves haven't necessarily like worked out 100%, I think that the process behind them, I can at least understand them from my perspective and say, oh, okay, I get why they're doing this and I can see where this could work. I am going to trust that he has a plan to, fill Diontae's spot. Now, the good thing is, from what George's film looked like last year, I think that George can step into that role in terms of like being a true X receiver playing on the ball. He's good enough against press. He can handle, in my opinion, it's going to look different. He's a different type of separator than Diontae is. There's very few guys that separate like him, but I think that he can handle more responsibility. And I think he needs to be the focal point of the offense in the passing game going forward. And if you guys watch the Russell Wilson film breakdown, which hopefully a lot of you guys have already, but it's up on the channel. Y'all should go check that out after I get off here, which is going to be here in a couple of minutes. But go check that out, and y'all will see why I think that Russ and George are probably going to be a pretty good pairing, just because of some of the stuff that Sutton could do in Denver. I think that George really fits that role in terms of being able to win at the catch point, stretch the field vertically. He's going to give him those 50 ball chances that George is really good at coming up with. And I think that George is a lot better route runner and a lot better separator than Sutton is. No disrespect to Cortland Sutton. I just think GP is a better player, and he's younger. So I think we haven't even seen close to the peak of what George is. And like I said, I think that this is just me thinking, again, I think that part of the decision to move on from Diontae is to see what is out there with George's potential, see what he could do in an expanded role, and to make sure that they are getting him out of the, they don't want to get him involved with a bad influence or something like that. And I hate labeling Diontae like that, but it's just the truth. Some of the stuff that was going on in the receiver room last year, unacceptable. Like it's just not a good deal, and I can see why they would want to start over, and that's just my opinion. So I will try to. I do have to like get off here because I have so much work to do, and I've still got the Patrick Queen video. I've been watching some film on here, and I got other work I got to do as well. So I won't be able to stay on too long. If y'all have any more questions, just please hit me up. Please again, just make sure that y'all please like the video. Do that for me. That would be fantastic. Just driving by to say hi. I think Bryce is gonna love Diontae. They need to separate. Yeah, I mean, good for Carolina too. Like I'll be honest with you, full transparency. I think Carolina is one of the worst run sports organizations in all of sports right now. I hate pretty much almost every move that they make, but I think this is a good one. They needed to get a separator for Diontae or for Bryce Young, so good for them. Did you see ESPN rate the Queen pickup as a C plus? I didn't see that. I can tell you right now, I've watched 2.5 games of Patrick Queen, and if you think that that is a C plus pickup for what they got him for, I think that that is absolutely asinine. I'll just be honest with you. But yeah, we'll see. We will see. Bro, you're killing it lately. Let that you're not biased or rude to the fans in your approach. It's hard between you so much. No, I appreciate y'all. I appreciate the love, man. Y'all, the numbers been crazy recently on the channel. Lots of new subs. Look, man, I love this stuff, man. I'm really passionate about it. I'm just happy to be doing this, man. To be honest with you, I can talk ball all the time. I definitely ain't trying to talk down to nobody. I think a lot of people just, we all want the same thing, right? Like I just try to provide like unbiased opinions and try to make sure I back those up with, film numbers, all that stuff. All right. Well, man, how's Queen looking? I'm telling you, I really do think that Queen's gonna be a good player, man. I'll be honest, like I think Brad Spielberg, he had him like 4 years, 70 million or something like that, like 18 million per year. They ended up getting him below 14. It's really just a 1-year deal, guys. Like that's why I always say, wait till the guarantees come out. It's a 1-year deal. Like they can get out of this if he's terrible next year, which he's not going to be, in my opinion. But if he's terrible, they can just move on for limited, dead cap money. So I mean, I think the deal itself, like the structure that they got him for, I thought it was a bargain. It's a very, very team friendly contract, like very team friendly. The cap hits are low. He's got very little guaranteed money. So all in all, man, I wish the absolute best for Diontae in his new home. I completely understand why the Steelers are moving in this direction, even if I think the return for it, it just kind of sucks because they ended up selling low or whatever. But I'm excited to look into Diontae Jackson's film. Give me something else to do. It's definitely going to be a wild rest of the week, man. I know we talked about it, man, right before free agency started. We talked about how this week was going to be crazy, and Russell Wilson signing. They make a big splash move, arguably their biggest move ever in free agency. They get Patrick Queen, and they trade Diontae. Oh my, it's gonna be wild, man. I can't wait to see what else is kind of in store. And really, like we'll have probably a crazy rest of the week. Have a bunch of content, hopefully for you guys, as long as I can carve out the time. And then then we'll be full draft mode, man. I got a lot of stuff planned for draft weekend. Gonna do some cool stuff for you guys. I got some stuff in the works I think y'all are really gonna like. So as far as what the next move is, I do think that you probably have to go, like they're going to definitely draft a receiver, but they have to go get a veteran receiver. Keep an eye on Josh Reynolds. That's the guy that I would say if you're looking to get a starting caliber receiver who kind of fits a lot of what the Arthur Smith offense looks for in their outside receivers. Keep an eye on Josh Reynolds. That would definitely be the guy that I would probably go for. And then just try to get somebody early in the NFL draft as well to kind of bring along and, take that spot. So, all in all, I will see you guys later. I appreciate y'all showing me love just on your way out. Please make sure that you like the video, comment, sub, turn on notifications. The game plan right now is PQ, Patrick Queen Film Room tomorrow. But if y'all haven't already done it, please make sure that y'all go watch the Rush Film Room, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Appreciate y'all. I love y'all so much. Peace and love.